Okay, you guys should be good to go. Just monitor your audio, make sure that microphone stays
I don't
on.
get how that's what you
You should be good to go.
Okay, Lily?
So, what inspired you to use microfinancing?
To start the Women's Microfinance Initiative,
Yes.
the recognition that women, particularly in developing countries, are a very disenfranchised population. And they have much less access to education, to any kinds of opportunities, and the only real way they can actually generate income for their families and themselves is to start a business, and you can't start a business without financing.
So, how do you inspire the women that you reach out to engage in the microfinancing and taking loans?
We don't actually inspire them. They inspire us. Once they find out that the loan program is available in their villages, we have waiting lists of women to apply for loans because they understand that starting a business is their one chance to generate some money that they can use to improve their households. And they're just like moms all over the developing world. They want a better life for their families and their children.
Why did you choose women as a main focus for your organization?
Again, because they're enormously disenfranchised across the planet compared to men.
So, how does the process work once a woman signs up and is chosen for to receive that loan? Like, what's the process?
The women, our organization WMI only runs loan programs in rural villages, and we teach the women in the rural village how to run the loan program. So there will be a staff, an administrative staff in the village. The loans are issued every quarter. Women come together in groups of 20, and then they go to the administration in their village and said, we have our group. We'd like to, each of us wants to get individual loans. They cross-guarantee the loans. So the women in the village then go through the list. They get references on the women applying for loans. And the women have to go to business skills training. And then after they do the training, the loans are all issued on loan issuance day, which is always a very popular day in the village. And then they start their businesses and they get visited by a local coordinator every month or two in their business, first so that we can verify that the businesses are ongoing and operating, and the coordinator can answer any questions, she can make suggestions, she looks at the woman's books, make sure she understands how she's keeping her records, and we have this very close-knit community that is constantly providing backup support for the borrowers, because that's a very important aspect of the loan program.
Actually did some research on your organization, and I just had a question about the way in which, do you teach the women about microfinancing and economics and business starting, or is it something that they already have and you kind of come in and just help?
Well, we won't teach them about economics per se. What we will do is teach them extremely practical business skills. How do you set up your business? Keep your business clean. Where are you going to get your inventory from? You have to sell your inventory for more than you paid for it. We teach them that income minus expenses equals profit. It's very basic business skills and record keeping, which many women don't have. And it's an interesting thing that you said, we do not teach them how to be entrepreneurial. Women are extremely entrepreneurial in the sense that they're very connected in their villages. There's very vibrant network in the villages where we work, and they know and they understand, oh, when the tomato harvest comes in, there's too many tomatoes. So if I can think of something to do with tomatoes that preserves them, that allows me to sell them in 3 months, then I'm going to have a business because I'm going to be filling a local demand. Do they think of it in economic terms, find a demand and fill it? No, they think of it in practical terms because they're watching the economic life in their village every single day. It's really fascinating to be embedded in villages and see what the economic fabric is at the grassroots level of a village, and they understand it.
So, what like repetitive trends, themes, or needs have you noticed in your work with women and families?
Repetitive trends. Number one that we have learned is that a loan without business skills training is as bad as giving people training and then never giving them a loan. You should never give somebody a loan without business skills training. That has been a huge lesson to us. And the women's demand for the training has also been fascinating. They want more training, they want follow-up training. They take so much pride in their businesses and they want to continue to build their businesses. The other trend that we see is how the income is spent. The women's priority is better food and paying school fees, and then the third would be paying medical bills and expenses for their children and the rest of their families. Many women have very extended families that they're taking care of. They'll be taking care of their sisters or their brothers' kids. They'll be taking care of elderly parents. So households where there's an income generally have a big payroll. And to see them consistently, we're entering our 8th year now. Spending the income on improving their households has been really, that's been inspiring to us.
What are some long-term effects and impacts of microfinancing in community?
The communities become, as a whole, they become much more prosperous. And that's another reason, going back to the previous question, why we focus our loans in loan hubs, so that we're not just doing, oh, we're giving a woman loan in the Southeast, we're giving one over here in the West alone. They're consolidated because there is an impact on the whole general community. When you have women starting businesses, that means they're generating income. Their household now has disposable income. So what are they doing? They're spending it on other businesses that have the goods and services that they want for their household. So that means somebody else can start a business or they can expand a business because now there's greater demand in the community. One of the really fascinating things we see is as the women become experienced in running a business, they become much better advocates. They learn about negotiation, they learn about demanding fair prices, they learn that they are now a valuable customer for whoever their supplier is. So they learn to become self-advocates, and that means it transitions over into demanding better services from the local government, demanding better schools, demanding better resources, and that's been fascinating. They become leaders.
So the other side of that, how do you think the community can play a role in the effort to educate women and empower them and help them, work towards that goal of having a successful business?
Well, it depends on what you mean by a community. The places we work in rural Africa have few resources. We work in village areas. There are not a lot of resources here. I don't think it's what the community can provide in terms of helping to better educate this women. It's what they provide in way of support, cultural support, support for women whose businesses are expanding, support for the women if they run for local governmental offices, support for the women if they're willing to go to the district government and demand the school books for the school that never showed up. So it's the community as a whole making sure that these women are supported when they do go out and try to expand their businesses, demand more and better resources. On a bigger level, if you mean community as in terms of a federal government in the countries where we work, well, the federal government could get better educational resources out there to the communities, not just for our women, but for the entire population.
What about our community? Like the community overseas, the community in countries that aren't considered developing countries, like what could we do to, besides just giving money, giving these loans, donating to these organizations, what can we do to further move forward the microfinance initiative?
Well, getting the word out, being able to educate people and make people more aware of how microfinance has such a dramatic impact on the households in rural villages if you can actually work at the grassroots level and get women the skills they need, and then of course the financial resources to start a business. So public awareness is a big deal, and changing attitudes about not having to work through monolithic institutions, being able to work on the grassroots level where you are actually having inputs to grassroots organizations or villages so that they can determine how they want to run a microfinance program in their village. What we try to do is give people tools. We don't try to have this top-down approach where we tell people what to do. Like, we never tell a woman what business to be in. Most women have natural affinities for particular types of businesses, just like anybody anywhere would. They have to pick their own business. They have to make these decisions. And that's a big part of our program. It's that it's self-empowering. It's not telling people what to do.
Did you ever consider men in your whole process of figuring out it was going to be Women's Microfinance Initiative? I know when we were thinking of our project, men came up as a topic, but we decided not to go that direction. Did that ever come up?
We did talk about men, and it really is a resource allocation issue. We're an extremely small organization. We have an annual budget of $250,000, and we're run entirely by volunteers in the United States. So you have to pick your focal point and stick to it, because you're with a small budget and no paid staff, you're not going to be able to be everything to everybody. And we just focused on women because traditionally they have had much more limited access to opportunities.
In our research about microfinancing, we learned a lot about the benefits of giving the money specifically to women, like the proven, like statistical data saying that giving the money to women is going to be more successful. So what do you know about that, and what could you share about that, if you know anything about it?
Well, we do only give loans to women because, yes, the research indicates that men have many more opportunities to spend the money in a way that doesn't support their family or their businesses. Is that always going to happen? I would say no. What we have really found is that when you give a loan to a woman, what you're really doing is giving a loan to a family. And we have found in the areas that we work that these businesses become family-run businesses. The husbands become very active in the business. Frequently there'll be a division of labor. The woman will stay in her shop and sell. The man will go out and buy inventory, or it'll be vice versa. Or if they have a used clothing store, which is very popular there. One of the most amusing things I ever had a woman tell me is when I asked how her husband helps with the business, she said she's always out front selling. She knows the whole community. They relate to her. They like her. And she picks out the clothes, and when she brings them home, of course, they have to be washed and readied for her shop, and her husband does the ironing, which is, of course, not culturally what men typically do in rural East African societies. And I just thought to myself, this is a great example how they decided, okay, this is a really good division of labor because we're working together to try to make our business the best business that we can. So we find they become family businesses, and that is our strong belief, is that the family will benefit and the business will benefit if the husband, the brothers, the uncles, whoever the males in the household are, and we encourage them all to work together to make the business the best they can.
How does the individual change after receiving the benefits of microfinancing?
Well, they don't change after receiving the benefits of microfinancing. They change when they start running a successful business. And it is just as you would imagine with anything in life that a person is successful at. It changes your outlook. You become to realize that you can succeed, and if you work hard, you will get ahead. And that's something that frequently is not obvious to people in rural cultures because life is so difficult there. You're going around every day looking for clean water, making sure you have enough food, trying to make sure you can get money for your kids' school fees, and you just can't get ahead. So when you start to see, oh, if I focus on my business and I work really hard and everybody in the family works hard, our business will grow, we'll be able to generate more income, we can improve our household, it's really empowering. We see women, no matter where you meet them, walking down the street, in town, taking care of the babies. They're always thinking in their heads, how can I improve my business? Where can I make a connection? How can I diversify? It's fascinating.
You're talking about the benefits, you sort of touched on like the benefits that aren't economic benefits. What other benefits is there for a woman who's, grown the successful business that aren't economic, like social benefits or that kind of thing?
Well, these are social benefits. When you feel empowered, then you become an advocate for yourself and your family in so many other areas besides just expanding your businesses. You feel confident to go to the local government and say, hey, look here, it says in the charter that our school is supposed to have books. We don't have any books. We haven't had books in a year. We haven't had books in 10 years. Where are our books? And you learn that your voice means something. So you can go out there and you start to be an advocate, and you learn to go under the surface. As you do, you see somebody selling the inventory you need for 1,000 shillings, and you think to yourself, well, maybe there's someone over here selling it for 750. Maybe there's someone selling it for 500. So when you go and you get an answer that doesn't sound right for you, instead of just saying yes, okay, and going away, you dig deeper, you go under the surface, you just become much more savvy about how the world works.
If a woman didn't have microfinancing, what would they have, and what would these women be doing if they didn't have microfinancing?
Most of the women, they would not have businesses, and in these traditional cultures, the woman is expected to take care of the family. She's expected to get the kids clothed, get everybody in the family fed, make sure that the house is clean, do all the cooking, and make sure the kids' school fees are paid. Well, if she doesn't have a business, there's only one way she's being able to do all that, and that is to get money from her husband. And so every day she's going to her husband, or every few days asking for money to buy food, money for the kids' clothing, and it is really a culture of dependency. That's very difficult, and it is not necessarily that a husband doesn't want to give the wife money. He may not have any money. The unemployment in the countries that we work in is extremely high. So he doesn't have any money. He gets frustrated that his wife is asking for money. He thinks it's her job to take care of the household and the children, which of course she can't do unless he gives her money. So you just get into this really degenerating cycle that nobody can break out of, a cycle of poverty, a cycle of emotional dependence, a cycle of frustration for everybody.
Can you just talk about this, how you see women, their self-esteem and their independence and stuff? I know we talked about how it's a culture of dependence, but how you see that change from when you first come into the country, or from when you first started the initiative to now that it's successful, there's a lot of successful women. Like, how do they have a newfound self-esteem, or like what?
They do have a newfound self-esteem, but when you talk about self-esteem, you can ask a woman and she may say, I feel better about myself, I feel more confident, I feel like I can take on new challenges and not be afraid. But one of the ways you would measure something like that is by seeing the impact, seeing what women are actually doing. Are they getting involved in local government? Are they demanding better prices from their suppliers? Are they demanding more resources from their local government? And that's what we see. We see them becoming much more outgoing and much more self-confident to take on new challenges that they never have before. And we see a lot of women, which I find very interesting, diversifying their original business into new and different lines, maybe something that they didn't have any experience in before, and they have the confidence to say, okay, I've been doing X, you know what? That's kind of the same thing as Y, and I see there's a demand for Y, so I'm going to try Y. And they aren't intimidated by a new situation.
So, now that you know a little more about our project and how we're trying to, inform our community and everything like that. How do you think your organization's work would align with the purpose of our project?
If your project is to get information out to the community about microfinance is what we do. We have a particular approach to it that is a grassroots approach, and it's very different from an institutional approach. And we believe that working at the grassroots level, where you're giving women the opportunity to make their own decisions and to run the program themselves, is a very big deal for them. And we have structured our program so it becomes self-sustaining. After the loan fund is funded, women graduate to banking after 2 years, and their funds are recycled. So if we left any of these villages where we work today, the loan program would continue. That's very important because you can't depend on support forever. It just doesn't happen.
How many villages have you worked with? If you could just
Villages, thousands. A village is a tiny, tiny area in rural Africa. And in a country like Uganda, which is the country where we started, it is a country that is got an enormously high population density. So villages are right next to each other. You are never alone in a country like Uganda. So we've been in thousands of villages.
So we know you said that you work in 3 villages now, but do you see yourself expanding and going to different countries and different continents and stuff?
We work in 3 countries now. And no, we don't see expanding past these 3 countries. There's enormous economies of scale when you're working in contiguous countries, and the logistics working in poor rural areas are enormous. The transportation infrastructure is abysmal. And just getting around and having our trainers go out from Uganda, we train the new borrowers in Tanzania, we train them in Kenya, and it's very important that the women feel like they're part of a network, that the women in Tanzania come to Uganda and get trained for a week. It's really important that you have this network support. So working past 3 countries, you would lose this whole peer network that we've put in place.
Oh yeah, how would you say microfinancing helps bridge the gender inequality?
I don't think men in general want to feel like they are carrying the whole burden of the household, having to be the sole support of a household, and having to have all of that responsibility on their own shoulders. It's really hard in rural areas for people to generate income. There are not a lot of things to do, and there's huge unemployment in these countries. So I think it actually relieves the men of feeling so isolated in having to be the sole support of their families. And when the women start generating income, they see that their wives are creative, they have good ideas, they're fiscally responsible, they are very astute marketers, they're good business women, and it allows them to work at something together. And you know what it's like when you work at something together, just like you are in your group here. It really creates a bond of mutual support and respect, and that's huge. It's really huge, especially since they're achieving their goal of having profitable businesses. It's really a wonderful thing for the whole family, and we think it's especially interesting for the children, because children who grow up in a home where there isn't a business, they see their parents being very passive, and they see their parents just feeling victimized to a certain extent, and they see them being inactive. When there's a family business, the children see their parents being proactive. Their parents have a purpose, their parents have a goal, their parents are out there thinking all the time, what can I do to make this a better situation for my household? and they see the direct relationship with the effort their parents put into it and the way the business succeeds. So it creates in their mind a whole mindset of proactivity, and that will get you to where you want to go. So I think it's enormously empowering for children in households where there are businesses.
What other information do you think is important that people should really know about that might not have come from any of our questions? I know that's a broad topic, but like.
Yes, that's quite broad. I think they should know that working on a grassroots level, where you have women who are leaders in the village running the program and teaching their peers, and you have this whole peer-to-peer transfer of knowledge, is huge. It should not be a top-down approach. It should be a bottom-up approach, with the women becoming self-sustaining and becoming self-supporting. And that way, the infrastructure we provide, we feel like we're scaffolding. And that development projects in general should be scaffolding. And then when you've funded them and when you've done the training and you've got the infrastructure in place, like with all scaffolding, the scaffolding should go away and the project should be able to manage and flourish on its own. And I think that's a really big deal that you don't necessarily see from a lot of aid and development projects.
Great. I have one last question. What have you learned from this whole experience and seeing these cultures and seeing these people? I'm sure it has to have opened your eyes to so many things.
It does. Traveling around in rural villages is a very eye-opening experience. I think the first thing you realize is that people are people everywhere, and they have a lot of characteristics that are the same. And people in really developing countries, people who are impoverished, they want the same things that every parent here wants for their family and for their children. And they are willing to work to get it. The issue is lack of resources. You realize how supportive communities can be, how there are vibrant networks in these villages. And we feel like we don't come in and put a network in a village. Networks already exist. We feel like we amplify them. We give them some inputs to make the network produce better results for the people who live in these villages. And people are really, really friendly throughout the world. I do not speak a host of native African languages, so there's usually a language gap wherever I go. But it doesn't matter. People know why I'm there. They know why they're there. And you can connect on so many different levels. And typically here, you run into people that you have a lot of common experiences with. When I'm traveling in Eastern Africa, I run into people that I have no common experiences with. And yet, you can develop this bond because you're working towards a similar goal. It really opens the doors in your perception about what the world is like out there outside the Beltway.
What else? We've seen that you've brought groups of students from this area
Yes.
over to some of these countries. What have you noticed from the students? Like, what have you noticed about the students that have maybe changed, or what they have seen as like their perceptions changed, and what was it like having them there?
Well, the interns that we have are a self-selecting group of people. Only certain people want to go live in an African village for a couple of months and work to help a local microfinance program. The overall experience, the students tell us, has been, as you might expect, eye-opening. We have many of them tell us that it's changed what they're interested in, what they want to do with their careers, and that they want to be involved first in something that is people-related. When you start working with people and you start to be a service provider to people, you realize how much you can actually impact and change somebody's life. And it's changed their attitude about what they feel like they themselves can accomplish as an individual. I think so many times people don't do anything because they think, oh, international aid, that's only done by large institutions that are controlling hundreds of millions of dollars. What can I as a single individual person do on this level? But the fact of the matter is you can do many things on this level. And so I think it changes their perception about what they can accomplish in a big picture.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Great.
That was great.
That was